Hello, my name is Quentin, and I'm going to be telling a little story about how I almost ran out of water through the Balsam Mountains. The Art Loeb Trail is one of the hardest backpacking trails in North Carolina. I completed it one weekend during a semester in college. The trail starts near Brevard and ends over 30 miles away through Pisgah Forest at the Daniel Boone Boy Scout Camp. There's over 8,000 feet of elevation change and maybe two handfuls of water sources along the entire thing, though they aren't evenly spaced, and the driest stretch is through the Balsam Mountains. When I got to the Balsam Ridge, it was my second day and Saturday. I climbed over the Blue Ridge. I was drinking water at what I thought was a reasonable rate, but it wasn't reasonable by any means. My first mistake was not taking stock of the water in my bladder. But in my defense, I climbed almost 3,000 feet and hiked a little over 10 miles at that point. I also had class on Monday and was over 11 miles from my car. I didn't want to stop and waste any time looking at the bladder in my pack. I noticed there was a lot of people going up to Block Balsam, but that wasn't a big surprise. It's super close to an access road off the Blue Ridge Parkway and somewhat of a tourist trap. Me being the hermit I am, decided to find another place to set up shop for the night, even though it was about to be dark in a little over an hour. So I kept going on the Art Loeb, decided to camp at the top of Tenement Mountain. My second mistake. It was getting close to being dark at this point. The sun was almost done setting. I set up my tent, inflated my sleeping pad, and unrolled my sleeping bag. That's when I noticed my bladder was empty, like vacuum sealed empty. Luckily, I had a reserve liter of water, but it was unfiltered, and it was in the bag that my Sawyer water filter came in with. At this point, the sun is almost completely over the Blue Ridge, and I only had the residual blue and my phone to use for light. I squeezed the minimum amount of water I needed to make mac and cheese for dinner. After I cooked my pasta shells, I drained the water out into a separate cup and drank the pasta water as my dinner beverage, seeing that I had to conserve as much water as possible if I wanted to complete my hike. By the time I finished my dinner, I was freezing cold, and that's with all my clothes on. It is well below freezing at this point, so I took all my supplies, excluding my bear container, into my tent, snuggled up with my water filter to keep it from freezing overnight and destroying the filters, and I tried to do the same thing with my water reservoir, but it was already too cold at that point and was probably going to give me hypothermia if I slept with it. Not to mention, my sleeping pad developed a slow leak, and my tent was flapping around just one good gust from turning into a sail and going down the mountain. I slept, waking up every 30 minutes on the uncomfortable cold ground to inflate my sleeping pad. I woke up for the last time around daybreak, before I could inflate my sleeping pad again. I immediately felt the reservoir. It wasn't completely frozen, but it was definitely a slushy. Unfortunately, the cap part of the reservoir was completely frozen, and it left me no way to access my emergency water supply. Feeling defeated, I laid in my tent, on my deflated sleeping pad, laying out my options. I could either man up and finish the 10-ish miles I had left, possibility of having no water for the rest of the way, or quit. I decided I was going to quit in that moment. I called my Uncle Jade, who was my emergency contact for my trip, and he didn't pick up, probably because it was around 6 a.m. I then decided to text him, and after doing so, started packing up my tent. It was so cold outside. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I didn't bring gloves. My mistake. So here I am, miserable, taking breaks every minute or so to warm up my hands in my fluffy pants for about 2 minutes. It took forever to pack up. I rechecked my phone at that point, and Jade still had not texted me. Fear raced through my head. I didn't want to walk back for 2 miles in order to stand in the freezing cold. He may have not even realized I texted him at that point, and it's still over an hour to get there, so I'll just be standing around in the freezing cold, possibly getting hypothermia. And that's when David Goggins spoke to me. I read his book almost a month prior. The two quotes that came into my head was, "It's possible to transcend anything that doesn't kill you," and "No one is coming to help you. No one is coming to save you." And with that, I decided to get down this mountain on my own. Texted Jay to forget about getting me, put my slushy water between my pack and my back, and set off. Took about a mile until I found a small stream defrosting. At this point, my reservoir had defrosted enough for me to push that ice blockage through the reservoir. Here's a video of that little stream that saved my life. So I attached my Sawyer to my backup reservoir and began the tedious task of squeezing water into the bladder I had and the water bottles. You've never filtered water before. It's extremely slow and it can't be rushed. It takes time for the water to pass through the filters, and too much pressure through them will damage them and can force dirty water out of the seals of the water purifier. And then what's the use? It took me about half an hour to filter through 3 liters of water, and that's about the time I checked my phone, received a message back from Jade. There's no way I was not finishing now. Sent him a picture of the stream, threw on my pack, finished my hike with time to spare. Looking back at my hike, I was definitely ill prepared, and I probably shouldn't have gone. I was extremely lucky to have found the water source I did and experienced the mild weather like that. It can get much colder and much drier in the Balsam Mountains. If I were to do it again, I would probably go while it was warmer and drop off a water catch, or have someone bring me water as I passed through the access road. That being said, it was a beautiful and rewarding experience, and I'm grateful to have completed it the way I did.